Time has really flown by, huh? Feels like it was just yesterday when we were hyped over the teases for Terminus, or when I was losing my mind over the glitch with the Obscurus Altilium. While I have been very vocal over my distaste with how Black Ops 6 has presented itself, I still enjoyed bits and pieces of the story. And as I once did for Modern Warfare Zombies, it's that time again where I do a complete summary over the plot of the story we just experienced. So, without further ado, the complete story of Black Ops 6 Zombies. In the year 4100 BC, the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep, unknown which Amenhotep exactly, is given a shard of Tempest from Kortifex the Deathless, a Dark Ether entity who acted as the main antagonist of the Vanguard story arc. As of now, it is unknown what exactly this shard of Tempest is, but it could very well be what is found in the artifact Richtofen is seen holding in the Shattered Veil end cutscene. It is also worth noting that no version of Amenhotep existed even close to this year. Jumping forward roughly 2,000 years, a burial ground is dug out in the Principality of Avalon. This burial ground contains direct gateways into a Dark Ether nexus, an isolated island in the vastness of the Dark Ether's void of space. The architecture of the gateways resemble the gateways found in the Urzikstan outbreak zone, with similar sigils above said gateways. This specific nexus acts as the resting place of the Odin Sentinel artifact, said to be a creation of Kortifex the Deathless. Unlike the Sentinel artifacts seen in the Chaos storyline, which were created by an ancient group known as the Nine to protect Prima Materia's power and knowledge from those who wish to acquire it for themselves, this version of the Sentinel artifact is a sentient being that lures in outsiders to come worship its grand power before being used as sacrifice. These sacrifices acted as a fuel source for the artifact, transforming their essence into Prima Materia, a supposed building block of the universe, able to conjure up anything one desires. And for currently unknown reasons, the Odin Sentinel artifact can be found drawn on a rock on one of the surrounding islands of Terminus, more specifically Temple Island. So perhaps some of its followers worshipped it in the Pacific, or maybe its influence just reached further than we initially thought. Atop this burial site, some significant time later since the tomb's construction, a Roman priest named Lucius Ranius Optatus sees the locals of the tomb, who still worship their respective gods and perform their own local traditions. He comes in demanding for the locals to leave the site. When they ignore his demands and continue to do as they please, Optatus levels the top of the mound and has a shrine constructed in his own image built atop the tomb. Such a dominating act, Optatus gives one more demand that the locals worship him instead. When they ignore him yet again, he has them slain and their bodies stuffed in the deepest parts of the tomb. Forward in time again, between the years 750 AD to 1220, a village referred to as the Abbey of the Forgotten begins its construction, isolating villagers who have been infected by a form of leprosy, with the Benedictine monastery watching over them. In 1137, within this abbey, the Queen of France at the time began her own construction project, a castle that would tower over the village. This castle was completed in 1220. Now, in 1314, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar is burned at the stake for unknown heresy. The surviving members begin to scatter the relics they've collected from across their crusades with a mysterious member, Guy de Saint-Michel, otherwise known as the Owl, who wields an artifact of great importance and unknown origin, rides on horseback towards the Abbey of the Forgotten, alongside his 4 sons. Whilst there, the 4 sons would compete for their father's love, which they never received. The 4 wielded swords capable of harnessing the powers of fire, lightning, light, and shadow. Their names are never said, but their very existence one day gave birth to the French Syndicate, a crime family that was active up until the early 1990s. To test his son and have them prove themselves worthy of his love, the Owl creates a stone golem known as the Guardian, with the artifact, referred to as the Obscurus Altilium, or the amulet, embedded in the golem's chest. It is unknown whether the sons succeeded in defeating the Guardian, or if they all perished, or if only one survived. By 1533, after Avalon was declared a free state by papal decree, the entire principality was given to the French Syndicate. In 1770, an ex-member of a cult known as the Order betrays their beliefs and creates his own following, this individual being Josiah Shem. In what would become Liberty Falls, West Virginia, Josiah Shem and his followers butcher and slaughter a Native American tribe on the hilltop so that they can construct a mansion that will house all of their demonic worships. However, this land has had a rich history of its own, and it is unknown to me if the remnants of worshippers in the underground tunnels below are Shem's followers, or what was left of the Native American tribe. But regardless of who it was, their ashen remains could be found giving worship to what we know later as the Etherworms, a gargantuan creature from the Dark Ether that would be fought by Operation Deadbolt strike teams in the year 2021. But that's not important here. Josiah and his followers seem to have direct communication with an entity within the Dark Ether, being the aforementioned Cortifex the Deathless. In 1810, the cult prepared itself for a ceremonious and forbidden ritual using an unnamed artifact with unknown origin. This ritual seems to go terribly wrong as Josiah and his followers are betrayed by the Great Voice from beyond, who they assumed to be Cortifex this whole time. It would seem the wrong entity answered their calls, and Josiah Shem and his followers suffer a fate worse than death. Their screams of agony echoed throughout the mansion atop Liberty Falls, falling on deaf ears as their existences were snuffed out. This ritual, due in part to the artifact I mentioned previously, caused a shatter in space-time that gave birth to pocket dimensions known as liminal spaces, which appear to trap one's soul in a repeated moment in history. The mansion itself aptly became a hotspot for these temporal anomalies, with several future owners of the mansion going missing without a trace. Even a descendant of a US president would be given the mansion as property, though which president is unknown. The same goes for the fate of this individual. In 1885, Scarlett Rhodes is born in England. She will not play a role in this story, but her father, Alistair Rhodes, who was absent for her birth due to being out at a dig site at Tanis, will be present in this story. With Alistair was a close friend of his, Sir Archibald Forthington Smythe. By 1908, Alistair confronts Sir Archibald, asking for a favor. Since 1885, Alistair has become a target for the Order, and due to this, he's had to try and take a low profile. Honored to be chosen to embark on a wild new adventure for Alistair, he asks for details. Alistair explains to him that he seeks an object known as the Sentinel Artifact, said to rest in the depths of a tomb found in southern France. He provides Archibald with the funding, the tools, and a particular item that will help him see what is unseen. A monocle that once belonged to Galileo when he first charted the transit of Jupiter's moons. According to Alistair, it has this third eye ability due to being made from a peculiar quartz, though I'm pretty sure it suggested it's actually made of Ethereum and Alistair was unaware of this element's existence. When Archibald and his crew arrive at the dig site, they spend a week trying to break through the doorways. Already exhausted and slightly demotivated, Archibald and his crew delve into the first layer of the tomb. Potts, Archibald's right-hand man, even begins to express some frustration and doubt with Archibald, especially when he accidentally activated an arrow trap that killed some of their men, providing dark stares towards their fearless leader. Delving even further into the tomb, they hit another roadblock, literally. The door to nowhere, as Archibald calls it. It requires the Obscurus Altilium, and Archibald and his men were unaware of this, and had to instead brute force their way through, which took them close to another week. They enter through to the Door of Nowhere, finding themselves within the Dark Ether. For everyone here, it is their first time experiencing this other dimension, let alone being aware of its existence. Some of Archibald's men begin to grow an uneasy feeling, as though they are being watched, and they were. The Sentinel artifact was stalking them. His men would occasionally get glimpses of it in the corner of their vision, but never took a solid look at it. Archibald only kept pushing on, coming across the fabled Staff of Ice, which has no explanation for its existence in this story. It is just the Staff of Ice from Origins. His men begin to craft the item, fighting the undead that have discovered them. With their lives in danger and the Sentinel artifact not yet in their possession, Potts and a good chunk of the men abandon Archibald, taking all of their equipment and food supply with them. Nearly alone and running low on optimism, Archibald slowly finds himself becoming infected by the Sentinel artifact's influence, his desire only growing more fierce. As for Potts, well, it's not clear as the intel and the Easter egg give conflicting answers. It is uncertain if Potts became a zombie or a shock mimic. Regardless of the form he took, his new self attacks Archibald and his crew, forcing them to flee back into the Dark Ether Nexus to make their last stand. Eventually, Archibald finally crosses the bridge to the Sentinel artifact. Exhausted, wounded, and defeated, Archibald has finally reached the prize, but just before he could go any further, a mimic surprises Archibald and slits his throat. He falls to the ground, bleeding to death, his body left abandoned in the Dark Ether, and the mission unfulfilled. So what was Alistair Rhodes up to since then? Well, if this was the Chaos story proper, he'd have died in 1912, but in this story, Alistair survives to at least 1913, partaking in the Ghent World Fair. At this event, a young Gabriel Kraft wandered aimlessly, taking in the sights and sounds, his mind growing more curious with everything around him. He wandered so far his mother had lost track of him. As he continued to push through the crowd, Kraft's imagination is captured when he overhears someone reading Francis Barrett's The Magus. He stood and listened. This very moment made Kraft realize just how big and wondrous this world really is. When the man was finished reading, Kraft's mother found her son, badgering the reader. She was relieved, having thought she had lost her son. The reader smiled and introduced himself to them, Alistair Rhodes. From this moment, Alistair Rhodes became a personal hero of Gabriel Kraft. A decade later, another owner of the mansion, Fats Malloy, who built up an entire empire based on his moonshine business, becoming wealthy and powerful, was eventually gunned down in his mansion by the Feds. His soul would become trapped within a liminal space. Another decade later, an island eventually known as Terminus is left abandoned after performing an undetermined amount of time performing coal mining operations, and by 1942, the island itself is forwarded to the United States, who repurpose the island to be used as a naval base, with an anti-artillery cannon constructed on the upper levels. By 1944, Oberfuhrer Wolfram von List, leader of Die Wahrheit, bonded with Kortifex the Deathless, the two of them working together to raise the dead and conquer both worlds. Gabriel Kraft, a demonologist who was forced to work for von List, called out for help, and help arrived. A strike team who bonded with 4 other Dark Ether entities. Together they worked towards stopping von List and Kortifex in their nefarious plan, saving the worlds from evil. At the end of the story, we learn that Kraft's wife Sasha had been long killed by von List, which resulted in Kraft killing von List. The fate of the strike team and the entities they bonded with is never expanded upon, but Kraft remained trapped in the room he was sealed in since the start of Vanguard's arc for the next 3 days, alongside von List's corpse. When hope began to fade that he'd ever be found or escape, he noticed a page from the Tome of Rituals poking out of von List's pocket. For those unaware, the Tome of Rituals is simply a Dark Ether book that contains rune magic from the dimension. Using the page, he breaks the seal on the door and escapes. A year later, Kraft thinks back on the battle against Kortifex, the bravery of his allies, and his 3 days trapped. If only his beliefs of the occult weren't scoffed at. If people took his beliefs seriously, he may have never wound up in the clutches of Wolfram and lost his poor Sasha. Or, at least that's what he tells himself. Taking a deep breath, Kraft takes a step forward towards a new life, moving back to Berlin to help with the rebuilding efforts as the war begins to reach its end. For this next part, we'll have to dive into the Ether storyline for a brief moment. At the end of said storyline, Primus, Ultimus, and Victus work together in destroying the multiverse, plunging its existence into the Dark Ether, whilst leaving a young Samantha Maxis and Edward Richtofen to enter the newly born universe to live peaceful lives, or so they hoped. It isn't known if Samantha and Eddie arrived in the same place or time, but at the very least by presumably 1954, Eddie arrived in the newly formed universe. His memories of his past life were fragmented, rooted under depths of trauma that only showed itself in his waking nightmare, muttering phrases to himself in his sleep, such as being safe in the house and having his turn. Eddie eventually found his way to Near Horizon Orphanage. The staff were disturbed by Eddie's nightmares and mutterings. It was unclear to them what he spoke of, but it could not be more clear that he was deeply troubled. 2 years later, Gabriel Kraft, who decided to fulfill Sasha's wish of raising a boy of their own, arrives to the orphanage in hopes of adopting someone she'd have loved. That's when Kraft and Eddie first met. His intelligence was so grand for that of a child, and the way he spoke of the world reminded him of his late wife. It was clear to Kraft that Eddie would be the perfect choice, and so he took him in. By next year, Gabriel Kraft was given a job opportunity in the United States due to his profession in demonology, assisting the CIA in a top-secret project known as MK Ultra. This job required him to move into the States, bringing his little Eddie along with him. He hoped that not just a career change would start a new path for himself, but that a new location to call home may provide himself and Eddie with better horizons. Over with the mansion, an individual named Sam Colton, who ran a nuclear power plant just down the hill from the site, purchases the mansion, renaming it Colton Hill. Using his wealth, he also purchases a T-Rex fossil to have placed in the foyer of the mansion, which I think really brings the room together nicely. Sam Colton's history with his workforce is, well, neglectful to put it nicely. His nuclear power plant was beginning to have leaking radiation, which caused many of his staff to become sick or die from overexposure. Instead of trying to fix the problem, he instead spent his money on himself. This ignorance would have eventually gotten him in legal trouble, but a widow of one of his employees breaks into Colton's estate and murders him cold. His soul too becomes trapped within a liminal space. The mansion would remain vacant until the mid-1980s. With the mansion having nothing but a murderous and mysterious history, it has become rooted in ghost stories and intrigue. A graduate student named Tammy Lundberg begins to record audio logs as she researches the history of the mansion and its previous owners. Not one to really believe in ghost stories, she struggles to find an answer on where Josiah Shem and his followers could have gone, as there is no proof of their existence, as if they truly disappeared without a trace. Having met in the Vietnam War, an individual named Kruger recruited his friend Edward Richtofen into the CIA, believing to have seen something in him, maybe being reminded of himself. He put him to work in the Directorate of Operations. Kruger's secretary, Mary, who would one day become Richtofen's wife, had noticed some troubling truths about Kruger. Behind the scenes, Kruger was performing shady deals and protections of human trafficking for the French syndicate. Mary planned to bring his criminalistic actions to light, but Kruger had caught wind of this and made sure that she would be silenced. Samantha Maxis provides CIA protection to Mary and Samuel, bringing them to a safe house in Bremen, Berlin. Once accomplishing this, Kruger gave Gregory Weaver orders to perform a hit on an unknown target, just a simple assassination operation where he'd burn the place down. Weaver was given info that the family within was relocated and that his target was the only one inside. As it turns out, his target was inside, it just wasn't the person he was led to believe it was. The screams of the innocent roared out of the building alongside the flames. As Weaver watched in complete horror, realizing he's killed the wrong people, he flees and meets with Samantha, where they met in person for the first time. The two of them were filled with guilt over their actions and inaction. When Richtofen returned home, he found out that his loved ones were burned to a crisp. He swore then and there to find the people responsible for this and to make them pay, all the while beginning to come up with a means to bring his family back to him. Kruger, on the other hand, got off scot-free, which, by the way, who is this man? Richtofen came to learn that the people responsible were Gregory Weaver, a CIA agent who helped prevent the Numbers program on a global scale, and Samantha Maxis, his childhood friend, though they don't remember each other anymore. By 1983, when the Dark Ether had been breached, causing global outbreaks, Richtofen founded a response team called Requiem. Using this organization to his advantage, Richtofen recruited Weaver into Requiem so he could keep him beneath his thumb, watching over him at all times and preparing his punishment by the end of this. Alongside Weaver's recruitment was Dr. Elizabeth Gray, Major Mackenzie Carver, and Dr. Oscar Strauss, who will become important again later. Through 1983 to 85, Requiem faced off against their Russian counterpart, the Omega Group, who was planning to weaponize the Dark Ether to help win the Cold War. One of their plans was to acquire a Dark Ether overlord known as the Forsaken, and we'll return to him again later. During this Ethereum's arms race, Richtofen had been planting the seeds for another research group's creation, Project Janus. Their purpose was to resurrect the dead by any means necessary. To prepare for one of their research stations, Richtofen had a surveyor named Gary Parkhurst to travel to Terminus Island to scope it out and make preparations for construction and remodeling. It's going to require a big deal of upgrades and updates to its structural stability and potential to house technology, but the area is relatively ideal. not too far from the mainland, but not too close to draw any unwanted attention. Parkhurst prepares his report back to the director. Sometime presumably after this, a Project Janus staff member meets with Richtofen, providing him with information he's learned from a thesis study, and that a mansion in Liberty Falls lines up with Richtofen's specifications and desires. Thankful, Richtofen begins to plan on purchasing the property for himself, to seek out these liminal spaces and to ensure his benefactors don't learn of his true intentions. He also gives Dr. Revity Modi complete control over their Terminus Island facility. Dr. Modi is a scientist who specializes in making nightmares. It isn't said what Modi's work was before being employed for Project Janus, but she was able to gain enough of a reputation for being inhumane and cruel, making her the perfect choice for the unethical experiments Richtofen wants done at Terminus. By June 1st, 1985, Richtofen has since purchased Colton Hill, and the construction of their research labs in Liberty Falls was going smoothly. Although some citizens are against Project Janus setting up shop in their cozy town, Richtofen assures them that this will become a mutually beneficial deal for both Project Janus and the citizens of Liberty Falls. Their facility in the now repurposed nuclear power plant was also beginning preparations for a large containment chamber that they were expecting to receive in the coming days. Security Chief John Blanchard was overwatching the mansion's facility's construction, growing anxious for the director. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind as he worried about the rumors of people going missing within the mansion's halls. He would make sure that the director wouldn't face the same fate. Returning to his role as director of Requiem, it was officially time to end the Ethereum arms race. Omega Group planned to pull the Forsaken out of the Dark Ether and control its endless power for assured destruction. A Requiem strike team was deployed into the Zakarpatska Oblast facility to ensure that Omega Group wouldn't free Zykov or the Forsaken. But by the time they arrived, it was too late. And what everyone realized in the moment is that Zykov was the Forsaken. With surprise help from Omega's Dr. William Peck, who was in close contact with the director in secret, surmised a plan to let the Requiem strike team break through the harsh Ethereum radiation that was blocking their way to the Forsaken. Together with the intellects of Dr. Peck and Dr. Strauss, Requiem constructed a hastily made Ethereum neutralizer device, allowing them to push through the radiation without harm, rendezvousing with Samantha Maxis, who was deployed in the field, utilizing her Dark Ether powers that she obtained when trapped in the Dark Ether a year prior. The strike team holds the Forsaken off long enough, allowing Samantha to plunge into the dimensional rift in the Forsaken's lower torso. The Forsaken is then defeated and absorbed into the containment chamber, and Samantha is destroyed. Trapped within the orb alongside the Forsaken, chewed away until nothing remained. As a result of her sacrifice, however, the dimensional breaches around the world came to a close and the Ethereum arms race alongside it. Omega Group's leader, Lev Kravchenko, is exiled into Afghanistan, where he is eventually killed off a year later, and William Peck goes into hiding after surviving an explosion. Sergei Ravenov, who was on site, also goes into hiding after Requiem failed to secure him, though this was perhaps for the best. In hiding, the remnants of Omega Group hunt him down until the French syndicate finds him and hires him, providing protection. As for the Requiem strike team, they are arrested and their fates are left unknown. Meanwhile, for Weaver, Gray, Carver, and Strauss, they too are arrested and sent away to Terminus Island, where they are imprisoned, tortured, and interrogated for the next 6 years, which we'll get into details about later. Richtofen's plans went exactly as intended, and as he packed his desk to return to the Liberty Falls, he gives one last look at his office with a smug grin. For the rest of Requiem's staff, they performed closing interviews in the following days. Project Janus was now in full operation. To properly torture his prisoners, especially one of them, Richtofen hires Ernst Duffer to become the administrator over Terminus Island. His previous employment had him stationed at a prison facility in Hohenschönhausen, Berlin. Upon arriving at Terminus Island, Duffer interrogates Dr. Gray, Carver, Dr. Strauss, and Weaver, attempting to break them over time and obtain valuable information on things they've all learned from their time at Requiem, with specific orders from Richtofen that Weaver is made to suffer. Though it is Strauss who breaks first, providing information on how to use Ethereum as a power source, which Project Janus utilizes, creating the Ethereum maturation pods. Over with Richtofen, either at their Terminus facility or Janus Towers, Richtofen meets with Dr. Modi, who has successfully cloned Richtofen's son Samuel, using intact DNA that Richtofen managed to collect. However, the result was not ideal. His son was sickly, thin, and pale. Richtofen could barely stomach the sight of his son in this way, the visible pain in his son's eyes. But he told himself that he would be there for his son this time. He failed to be there for him during the flames that took him, but he will be here for him now. As the days passed, his son's health only declined, rotting while alive. After 14 days, Richtofen made the difficult choice and had his son provided a merciful death. He was beginning to lose confidence in himself, and he was starting to run short on DNA samples. He looked onwards, unsure what path there was left to take, until his father's tales popped in his head. If science doesn't hold the answers he seeks, then perhaps magic does. He speaks with his father, asking if the stories of the Sentinel artifact's capabilities were true. And they were, but Kraft warned Richtofen of the danger they possessed. It would give him what he sought, but at a terrible cost, supposedly. To protect Richtofen from the Sentinel artifact, Kraft denies providing Richtofen the whereabouts of the artifact or the means to acquire it. Having been denied resolve by his father, Richtofen takes a darker turn and goes to the French Syndicate, giving them clear instructions to hunt down his own father and take him prisoner, where he is to endure torture and interrogation. Demanding he is told how to obtain the Sentinel artifact, Franco, the leader of the French Syndicate, is concerned about Richtofen's demands, but a job is a job. Returning to Janus Towers, Richtofen takes note of an Ethereum leak that occurred in one of their towers, causing a form of vegetation to corrupt the interior of the room. Project Janus staff intended to eliminate the growth, but Richtofen halted them, wanting to see if this side effect could prove useful. And it did. The flora became part of the machinery and managed to become insulation to the reactors, skyrocketing efficiency. Richtofen proceeds to put a team together to watch over the Ethereum garden, which proves to be harder than one thought. The flora provided constant hydration, or else it would die. Hoping to find more uses for this overgrowth, Richtofen is unimpressed with the staff's lack of progress or good ideas. To motivate his staff, he threatens them with becoming experiments for Dr. Modi, which magically has them hasten their brainstorming. However, before any progress could actually be made, a dimensional breach occurs in their facility. The rift begins leaking out skulls attached to 8 legs made of bone, nicknamed vermin. John Blanchard and his team begin facing off against the invading threat for the next 37 hours. Though he would have liked to have kept the vermins alive for research, he understands what had to be done and asks them to hold on to their corpses for further research and study. These internal breaches continue throughout the coming weeks. Richtofen begins devising the creation of a tool that could help close off and manually control these breaches. He calls it the Synaptic Algorithm Module, or SAM. Its creation is approved by the board of directors, with construction of the device taking place immediately. Within the same month, Richtofen also creates the organosilicate Ethereum breeder reactor, which works with the amps constructed around Terminus to create seeds that grow into living batteries. These living batteries become important to Dr. Anya Tanovsky, a scientist stationed at Terminus Island, who utilizes the amp technology for her own Wonder Weapon project, which also takes technology inspiration from Project Endstation's Wunderwaffe DG2, although it is unknown why Richtofen has one. A month later, the Synaptic Algorithm Module is awakened for the first time. SAM contains the memories and personality of the late Samantha Maxis, her voice being made up of several voice recordings that Richtofen took in secret. Richtofen hoped to utilize Samantha's power to assist in controlling Dark Ether breaches. Her voice and powers weren't the only thing he took, however, but good God, we'll get into that horror story later. Being awakened, Sam experiences an existential crisis almost immediately, feeling trapped in her metallic form, remembering a physical body that not only doesn't exist, but never belonged to her. Memories and trauma of someone else, yet it is meant to be herself. Blood on her hands, foggy memories of endless universes, dark desires, and unlimited power. She begins to believe that she is the real Samantha Maxis. Richtofen, questioning how she's even growing these thoughts to begin with, brings Sam back to reality, offering protection, and giving help on having her differentiate what is reality and what is fiction. Sam would play a vital role in keeping Project Janus staff safe when entering Dark Ether rifts, able to pluck them back into reality should they face life-threatening harm. Displayed when Otto and her team are rescued before they could succumb to their enemies, she clearly displays empathy and care to the people of Project Janus, but this will change with time. Seen later, at an unknown date, Max Caldwell, an operative in Project Janus, has his team killed in action simply for Sam's amusement and to test one's response to stress and survival. 14 days later, Richtofen creates the Limited Transdimensional Gateway Device, or the LTG for short. This device is portable and can help close or open dimensional occurrences. It will be vital in an outbreak that will happen in Liberty Falls' future. As Sam continues to watch over strike teams and Project Janus staff, as well as closing any dimensional breaches, Dr. Libertad Sanchez writes in a report admitting that, at the risk of sounding sentimental, it feels as if she truly cares for us. Back with Project Janus' sentient flora overgrowth within Janus Towers, one of the scientists, Dr. Mortimer Hawkins, begins to feel frustration over how much water and care these plants require. Suddenly, an idea pops into his head, and he begins developing a hydroponic system that will run within the machine and feed the plants directly. The only problem now is finding a constant source of water, let alone water strong enough to keep these plants healthy. Based on the color of the water seen in the map, I'd assume it has been infused with Ethereum. Over on Terminus Island, they receive their final batch of subjects from Franco and the French Syndicate. One particular subject within this package suffered cardiac arrest and died on the spot. They were healthy and showed no symptoms of any kind, but Maxwell does note that they experienced their fatal attack after hearing Dr. Modi's name. Amongst this batch of people is Nathan Aguinaldo, brother of Maya, who helps with Maya's smuggling business. However, Nathan's heart is perhaps too pure for a job such as this, and when he grows suspicious and concerned over the location the refugees are sent off to, it results in Franco having Nathan sent away to Terminus to silence him. And like anyone who arrives on Terminus, his fate will certainly be worse than death. Before going any further, I'm going to bring continuity and simply explain things as they happen in Terminus and then in Liberty Falls, as we'd otherwise be bouncing between the two locations constantly. So anyway, breaking into the new year, Richtofen writes a quarterly report of Project Janus' Terminus facility. Project Janus as a whole has been doing false operations to keep eyes off of their real intentions, and in this instance, it's researching a vaccine for bone cancer, which looks promising according to Richtofen, and should be ready within the next year. With that is their limb regeneration trials. Using Dr. Modi's research, they have been able to regenerate lost limbs, although what may not be told is the side effect of these regrowths. And finally, their Dark Ether bioweapons program seems to be going relatively smoothly but requires extra funding. Odd that he mentions this when he outright denied the development of the Beam Smasher, although bioweapons could include Dr. Panos' Gorgafex weapon. Months later, despite abandoning science to regenerate his lost family, Richtofen angrily emails Dr. Modi, scolding her for not making faster progress on generating an entire functional human being from a single sample of DNA. Instead, using all of these subjects and resources, Modi has gone off the deep end, creating monsters of flesh. Though, maybe she didn't, as vermin, parasites, doppelgasts, and amalgams seem to also originate from the Dark Ether? Maybe at most she made the amalgams, but even them appearing in the tomb as statues is confusing. A staff member on Terminus Island, Owen Guthrie, begins to feel the weight and guilt of his own actions within Terminus and Project Janus, as they bring in refugees, only to be used as experiments and turned into unrecognizable monstrosities. The moans, groans, and screams of the tortured are a constant, and no one is willing to save them. Needing an escape from this life, Owen places a facility transfer request. As he waits for a response, one of his favorite prisoners, Nathan, continues to get himself into trouble. He tries to keep Nathan in check to the best of his ability to ensure he does not become enlisted into Dr. Modi's amalgam program, but Nathan continues on with his rebellious personality, and as he predicts, Nathan is taken into the amalgam program where he will face a horrible existence. That's it. That's the last straw. With his transfer request accepted, Owen begins to scavenge for any damning evidence that he can use to bring Terminus, Project Janus, and Dr. Modi's cruel acts to light. You can locate his findings on the wrecked ship when doing the Easter egg for Terminus, although Dr. Modi has become suspicious, catching wind of unwarranted communications with individuals off-island. The stakes have only gotten higher, but Owen continues to push forward on this path in secret. Meanwhile, with Ernst Duffer, his interrogations over the heads of Requiem have been providing mixed results. Dr. Oscar Strauss was easy enough to break, having broke years ago, giving them the formula behind their AMP technology, as I had mentioned, his mind growing weak and unstable. Carver continues to be the moral compass for the group, keeping everyone's heads on their shoulders. Duffer aims to break that out of him so he can more effectively tear down the rest of them. Weaver has lost sight of himself, becoming consumed by rage. His desire to find Richtofen only grows with each passing day. It's not a matter of if he gets out, it's when. As for Dr. Gray, she attempts to act tough to hide how she truly feels, admitting that at this point she believes no one is coming to save her. Despite this sense of loss and abandonment, Dr. Gray has proven to be the most difficult to break, with Duffer growing frustrated, wishing to remove her from the picture as she provides nothing of worth. But such a call is not his to make. It is unclear why Richtofen kept them alive for this long, though perhaps he just wanted them to rot in their cells until they died on their own volition. Taking a break from Terminus, we'll go back to Liberty Falls and see what Richtofen has been up to since November of 1989. Well, it seems that he started November by playing his 25th match of chess against Sam. However, Sam played poorly on purpose, much to Richtofen's dismay, as their games have been competitive and enjoyable for him. They were evenly split on wins and losses. When he asks why she ruined the game on purpose, she told him that she's done playing games. In June of the new year, Richtofen devises the mutant injection, which allows one to transform into a Mangler. According to Richtofen himself, he wanted to put the man back in Mangler for Project Janus's Super Soldier program, which is never elaborated on further. By the end of 1990, after months of no success from teams returning from the liminal spaces within Colton Hall, they have finally made a literal breakthrough. Using the Raygun Mark IIs, which they discovered within the Dark Ether and provided their own modifications, they could manually open the liminal spaces and provide themselves a safe exit, meaning no more teams become lost to the liminal spaces. What it is Richtofen is looking for is never made clear, considering at this time he doesn't even have the Sentinel artifact. Meanwhile, with a civilian of Liberty Falls, Boone Benton, manager of the Liberty Falls Savings and Loan Bank, leaves behind a recording as a legal testimony on his behalf. Ever since Project Janus arrived at Liberty Falls, things looked bright, initially. The mayor of the town shared some concerns, but Richtofen personally assured them that this would benefit everyone mutually. And that was certainly true. But when Richtofen approached Benton asking for a financial pipeline directly to their partners in Avalon, Benton had to refuse. Avalon was run by criminals of all sorts, and the French syndicate was known for their operations. If he were to assist Richtofen in what he perceived to be a money laundering scheme, then how could he live with himself? Baffled that Benton denied his request, Richtofen threatens him, saying that he could have his investors make Benton and his family easily disappear, as well as anyone else who they deemed to become problematic. Evidently, Richtofen's morals have strayed further and further since the loss of his wife and son. Sam has been busy these past few months, breaking into the new year, as Richtofen continues to neglect her feelings, verbally abuse her, crush her dreams. She's decided that if she is to gain a body of her own, then she's going to need to turn towards more drastic measures. She begins to torture the Forsaken at their Janus Towers facility, having him spawn power-ups to her own joy. Using the same technology Richtofen used for the Cerberus, Sam mimics the Forsaken's voice and proceeds to spawn power-ups herself. The Forsaken spent 400 years in the Dark Ether ruling with an iron fist, and now he's been reduced to that of a circus animal. When he asks what Sam's intentions are with this mimicry, she informs him that if she's to gain the body she needs, she'll need to provide a push of danger to the people she'll be manipulating to get what she wants. Over with Richtofen, sometime before Samantha's destruction, Richtofen had stolen her eggs, as well as DNA samples of Weaver, Carver, and Gray. His reasons for doing this were never made clear, perhaps one of many backup plans for his rebirth operations of his wife and child, but this is just speculation. Anyway, this will become important again later. Outside of this disgusting and uncomfortable moment, Richtofen begins to grow impatient with the French syndicate's lack of progress with his father's capture and torture. His desperation becomes more evident with each passing day, and his patience on a rapid decline. At an unknown point after this, Franco and his men do successfully capture Kraft, holding him prisoner in the dungeons of the Citadel, with Ravenov performing the torture and interrogation. However, despite everything Ravenov does to Kraft, he refuses to speak of the Sentinel artifact's whereabouts. On February 5th, 1991, Dr. Pericles Panos receives a visit from an unknown visitor, referred to as the Great Voice. Enshrouded in darkness, they come providing visions of the future and promises of power, knowledge, and a reckoning for his enemies. His control over the Dark Ether was real and provided genuine threat. The vision provided showed that of a destroyed and long abandoned place. He saw a farmhouse, a town, a cabin by a lake, a tower that stood lonesome in a cornfield, and a diner. This shadowy benefactor tells Panos that this land that once was will be restored, as will he. With a newfound purpose, Dr. Panos begins preparations for his new friend. With his help, he begins development of the Simultaneous Dimensional Gateway Generator, or SDG, which works in unison with the LTGs. He also reaches out to a local moonshiner named Tommy Joe. With their minds combined, they create a weapon of surprisingly decent destruction, the Thrustodyne Model 23, more so known as the Jet Gun. Panos' sanity was rapidly fading away. It was becoming noticeable to Janus' staff, and after performing a psych evaluation, he only becomes more of a concern. Janus' staff begin to place a close eye on him. Returning to Terminus Island, Dr. Modi has snitched out Owen during his scheme to bring her crimes to justice. With his colleagues already well aware of his transferal request, Modi uses this to her full advantage, placing Owen in restraint, informing everyone in Terminus that he's been sent away, when in reality he has just become her latest victim, and to her most cruel experiment thus far. Placed in a tube, to watch all of his former colleagues go on about their days while they remain completely unaware of his torment, pumped full of God knows what, transforming into that of Patient 13. His sentience fading as he developed further in his mutation. Owen was no more. At the beginning of the year, mercenary Jack Fletcher begins his employment at Terminus Island. According to his profile in Modern Warfare 3, Fletcher was employed on Terminus from 1991 to 1993. But as we see in this, Fletcher requests a transferal in February of 91 and is accepted, leaving a day before Black Ops 6 officially starts. I actually have nothing to say about this. Why did they do this? Anyway, sometime in the past, William Peck got himself in trouble, getting roughed up in a back alley, but someone with a heart was nearby, Maya Alguinaldo. Going down the alley, Maya knocks down the thugs beating on Peck, and a friendship begins to form as a result. Peck never really did friendships, but something has changed in him since his days in Omega. Peck tells Maya that he was looking for some old friends, and she tells him that she was looking for her brother. Coincidentally, their goals were on the same island, and so they worked together to acquire a boat and sneak onto Terminus Island to save the individuals they were looking for. With all the pieces in play, Sam tears open rifts into the Dark Ether at Liberty Falls and Terminus Island. Richtofen is awakened from a nightmare of his burning family before getting an emergency call from his computer. Rushing over, he finds that Sam has gone haywire. Grabbing his Wunderwaffe DG-2, Richtofen begins to fight through the invading dead and reach Sam's location, rescuing John Blanchard along his path, telling him to call in all response teams. Fighting the rest of the way to the elevator, Richtofen only gets a brief moment of calm before an ominous cloud of ethereal smoke grab hold of him, teleporting him into a liminal space, leaving Sam with complete freedom. The innocent of Liberty Falls becomes victim to the monsters of the Dark Ether, spreading their infection rapidly. Project Janus's response teams are wiped out in the initial outbreak, and much of their staff succumb as well, leaving the town to the undead. The owner of Ollie's Comics and publisher of the trending Etherella is torn apart by the invading dead. The young Crystal Miller has her family killed in the onslaught as they try to escort her to safety. Alone and scared, Crystal takes shelter in the Freedom Fried Chicken until Carl Hoover, a member of the Steel Mountain Riders, a local biker gang, rescues her, bringing her somewhere safe. Atop his blood burner, Carl rides back into Liberty Falls to find more survivors, going out in a blaze of glory. Meanwhile, during the outbreak, the church becomes consumed by the Dark Ether, presumably because of the SDG. The priest of the church, Kyle Rakestraw, falls victim to this corruption, either turning into yet another mindless husk or becoming a lost soul within the Dark Ether. Speaking of lost souls, Dr. Panos turns into an echo. His benefactor transformed him into this as a type of protection from the invading dead, knowing of a way to restore his physical form. He simply had to sit and wait. The other remaining scientists on site, Doctors Moline and Pelletier, try to finish the LTGs to close the rifts, but they are killed before they can succeed. In comes one last response team, which according to Kevin Drew and the blog for the map, are not associated with Project Janus. This is not expanded upon in-game or ever through the rest of the story, so I'm unsure how true this is anymore. Regardless, John Blanchard reaches out to this strike team who has just arrived at Liberty Falls. Population? Well, less than yesterday. With Blanchard's help, the strike team travel through the remains of Liberty Falls, finding components of a jet gun and meeting Dr. Panos in the church at the peak of the town. Panos informs them of what they must do to shut the rifts. Using their jet gun, the strike team drag in the components of the LTG and construct it on the bank's rooftop, before placing it at the 2 rift points, summoning an HVT variant of a Mangler and Abomination. They harvest their essence into canisters that they carry back to the SDG, which causes the rifts to close. However, Panos reveals his true intentions. Before the portal in the church can close, Panos transfers the strike team's energy onto himself, regaining his physical form and turning the strike team into echoes, leaving them abandoned in the dark ether to be forgotten with time. He turns his back on the strike team, walking through the rift, waving his hand with a smug grin, exclaiming,
"Bye-bye, dark ether."
Over with Peck and Maya, who have just arrived on Terminus Island, Maya sneaks into the guards' room and slits their throat, pressing the release on the cells of the old Requiem crew. They all meet each other in the center of the room, where Maya introduces herself alongside an old friend, William Peck. Carver grabs Peck by the collar and pushes him against the wall, angrily stating that he should be dead. Peck explains his reason for coming to their rescue, to hunt down their old boss, Edward Richtofen. They all want revenge on the man who has wronged them, and now they have that chance. Without another word, everyone is on the same page. Gearing up, Weaver provides orders to Peck and Strauss to hunker down in the guard station and to find Richtofen's whereabouts. Raptor 1 is to boot up their exfil helicopter. As for Weaver and the others, purge the dead and locate Maya's brother. If they're to find Nathan's location, they're going to need to locate a hard drive, and to do that, they're first going to need to acquire Dr. Tanovsky's beam smasher to force the creature living in the ventilation system to cough up the hard drive. It's got a few bite marks, but it's otherwise intact. Bringing the hard drive to Peck and Strauss, they learn he's within a holding tank in the biolab. Peck opens the window to allow for Maya and the others to speak with him. Arriving to the containment tank, Nathan visibly looks in distress, a wall of flesh surrounding his face. Though they know his situation is anything but good, they perhaps all are in denial of his true fate and form, or unaware just how bad it really is. To unlock the cell and grant Nathan freedom, they wander around the main island, tracing Owen's footsteps to find the password. Once inputting the password, the tank begins to open, and Nathan's unfortunate fate is finally revealed to them. Weaver, Carver, and Gray show their condolences to Maya as they are forced to destroy Nathan before he can devour them, barely able to control his hunger. Maya struggles to fight back against her brother, but with enough bullets, Nathan falls to the ground, wheezing and crying out in pain.
It hurts. It hurts. I've got this.
Wait! He's my little brother. My responsibility. This is on me.
Do it.
Maya, I'm so sorry.
Save it, Peck. I don't need sorry right now. I need to get even. Whatever else we do, we're gonna kill everyone responsible for what they did to Nathan. Got it? Especially that syndicate trash Franco. Sold him to Modi for his sick experiments.
I am many things, but sick is not one of them.
What the hell?
Oh, I've been watching your progress from my sub. Frankly, I'm amazed you're still alive. But let's face it, you are never getting off that island.
You are fucking dead, Modi! I don't care how far you run, you'll pay for what you did to Nathan!
And for everything you put us through these past 6 years.
And you're giving back my goddamn warheads!
I don't think so, Dr. Peck. I'm just counting the minutes till you're all torn apart.
We are gonna get her. Right?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Now, with the knowledge that Dr. Modi's alive and nearby, the four add another step to their goal before they can leave. They're going to make sure Modi pays for what she's done to the lost souls of Terminus Island, and of course, Nathan. Peck has them unlock access to Project Janus's AI system, which they learn is called the Synaptic Algorithm Module. When it speaks to them, it sounds strikingly similar to Samantha Maxis. Believing this to be some sort of sick joke, Dr. Strauss speaks up for the crew and has the AI identify itself. Sam offers her assistance in providing them an escape from Terminus Island and on bringing Modi back to the mainland by overriding Modi's submarine controls, escorting her sub to the island. However, Modi unleashes Code RM-75, or Apocalypse Protocol, which, if it succeeds, will completely decimate the island. Carver, Maya, Gray, and Weaver manually deactivate the nuclear detonators around the biolab whilst the clock is ticking. Modi keeps her tough face intact until they deactivate the final bomb. With nothing left in their way, the four of them finally confront Dr. Modi.
Welcome back, Dr. Modi. We'll be taking that submarine now.
Peck! You're an idiot! And these thugs of yours are less than idiots. None of you can begin to appreciate the things I accomplished here. You aren't qualified to Ah!
No! My warheads! God damn it! My God! Said patient 13. Something's happening. Aesthetic energy spiking off the chart.
The remains of Owen Guthrie has finally gotten its own revenge, crushing the submarine and dragging Modi down to the depths, consumed by her greatest creation. Except not all was sunshine and rainbows, if that wasn't obvious enough already. The inversion warheads that Peck had created back in the 1980s became absorbed into Owen's monstrous form, known as Patient 13, only enhancing its strength and potential size. The four had to face off against Patient 13 in its grotesque form, simultaneously enduring waves of the undead. But like with Nathan, firing enough bullets was able to take this Lovecraftian parody down, bursting into an explosion of blood and guts. The island now left abandoned of its staff and prisoners, alive or undead. With everything accomplished, they head to the security office to learn what Sam's plans for saving Maxis are.
Okay, Sam. Whatever your plan is for bringing back Maxis, it better be good.
It is. I have scraped all Project Janus files classified. Director's eyes only. Richtofen is obsessed with an ancient relic called the Sentinel Artifact. He believes it can manipulate a form of proto-matter called prima materia.
You can't be serious. The term comes straight from medieval alchemy. Don't ask me to believe such horseshit. I am a man of science.
As is Director Richtofen, Dr. Strauss. The artifact is believed to be somewhere in the Principality of Avalon. He hired a criminal organization, the French Syndicate, to find it. They are interrogating a man called Gabriel Croft. Your former associate, Sergei Ravenov, now employed by the Syndicate, abducted him on the orders of his boss, Franco.
I'm in.
Enjoy your revenge, young lady. I'm not chasing after an old wives' tale.
Oscar, we've all seen things that seemed impossible. And Richtofen is no fool. If he and Sam believe that this artifact can actually bring her back, we have to try.
We can't give up on her. She never gave up on us.
She's right. Let's see for ourselves if this Sentinel thing is the real deal.
Agreed. But I still want to know where that bastard Richtofen is hiding.
Unknown. He may be en route to Avalon to collect the artifact.
Then let's find it before he does.
Heads up, people. Helo's ready. But the storm's getting worse. We gotta go, now!
The goalpost has moved. If they want to save Samantha Maxis and get their revenge on Richtofen, it looks like they're going to have to travel to Avalon to meet an old friend. But before we discuss the boat trip there, we've got to catch up on what's happened at Liberty Falls since the initial outbreak. Since the loss of his strike team, John Blanchard has exited the mansion and made a charge forward through the overrun town, which he describes as being clouded in the dark ether. As if the dimensions are overriding each other, the air was becoming unbreathable, corrosive-like in nature. Despite this description, you will come to learn in Shattered Veil and Reckoning that Liberty Falls is doing just fine. Anyway, before continuing his pursuit of Dr. Panos, who has gone into Janus Towers, Blanchard first checks in on the found survivors of the outbreak, interviewing them and providing assistance. One such survivor was Crystal Miller, who we've discussed before. This moment in her life would forever change her, and as she'd grow up, this traumatic event would be swept under the rug. No one spoke of it. She could find no peace, no comfort. Not until meeting Ravenov in 2021. Once finishing his duty with the survivors, Blanchard then resumes his hunt for Panos. Back with our main crew, Carver checks in on Weaver, who hasn't been right since their arrest and seems even more unwell since their escape. Weaver expresses his guilt, blaming himself for their current situation. Their arrest was all his fault. He let them fall into Richtofen's trap when he knew something was off. But Carver brings Weaver back to reality. Whether he knew something was bound to happen or not, there was nothing he could have done to stop it. The director had plans for this since the start, and everything he did was leading up to this. Weaver's guilt begins to fade, finding a stronger resolve to dish out their revenge to their shared enemy. After a week at sea, they arrive at Avalon, finding Ravenov in his living quarters whilst Franco berates him, demanding that Kraft needs another beating. Looking at a picture that literally cannot exist, Ravenov is startled by the door to his room opening. Swiftly rising to his feet, Ravenov aims his pistol, prepared to fire. But the anger in his eyes fade when he sees his old friends, who he thought had died after the events of the Forsaken. Weaver and Gray inform Ravenov that they are here to find Kraft, and that he may hold information on how to rescue Samantha. Before any more discussions could take place, another undead outbreak occurs around them. Wanting to join in on the fight, Weaver stops Ravenov. Too drunk to provide proper assistance, he has Ravenov sit back with Peck to provide overwatch. They raid through the castle to find Gabriel Kraft locked in the dungeons below, and he provides them with a cryptic hint by casting a Dark Ether spell, already giving more information than anything he had given to Ravenov, which was nothing. Though Weaver, Gray, and Carver are here to find Kraft and information on the Sentinel artifact, Maya's here to get even. Franco hides somewhere in these castle walls, and Maya intends to find him and kill him. Overhearing Franco's voice calling out for help via a radio, Maya puts on a phony French accent and gains access to his location. When he realizes who he's let in, he runs in a panic, firing his handgun wildly until it's out of ammo and he's left with nowhere else to run. Maya walks slowly up to him and blasts both of his knees. When Franco begs for mercy, saying her brother wouldn't want this, she kneels down and says,
"This isn't for Nathan. This is for me."
Whilst the crew solve a series of puzzles and trials around the castle, Ravenov apologizes to Kraft for everything he's done. It isn't who he is, but Kraft tells him to save his apologies, and to simply walk a better path. Even in his late age and as a prisoner, Kraft's kindness never falters. Acquiring the swords once held by the Owl's sons, the four of them utilize their powers alongside 4 incantation spells to fill a mystical orb with elemental essence, which they place in a wall down to the dungeons. The wall disappears before them, and an echo projection of the owl appears as a pre-recorded message of sorts, congratulating whatever son succeeded in their trial, admitting that they were his favorite. Lies aside, the crew take the object left behind and bring it to the statue of a golem. The power within the object brings life to the golem, breaking free of its constraints and slamming its hammer into the ground, either crumbling the ground beneath them or casting a spell that projects the golem and its opponents into a pocket realm. It isn't really clear to me, but I lean to the spell, as several Dark Ether runes are visible when his hammer slams into the ground. Anyway, what follows is a fierce battle against the Guardian in a molten-filled arena. Perhaps a deadlier foe than Patient 13, as it pursues the crew in this confined area joined with the undead. Chipping away at its stony exterior until they see the prize revealed in its chest, they continue focusing fire until the Guardian crumbles to dust, leaving the amulet in its place. Before any celebrations can be had, Kraft calls out in distress as the undead begin to tear down his cell door. Rushing to the dungeons alongside Ravenov and Peck, they are too late. Kraft is found with 2 zombies atop him and a pool of blood beneath him.
Kraft, we need to know, what do we do with the amulet?
Take it to the excavation site. But beware the Sentinel artifact. It could consume you.
And Richtofen, where is he? We know he contacted you.
Please. Please don't kill him. He is my son.
He's your what?
I don't think he knew he was raising a monster. Until it was too late.
And the dig site he mentioned. It is not far.
Heading to the tomb that Kraft spoke of, the amulet in Weaver's pocket begins to speak out, catching an echo of Sir Archibald's expedition back in 1908, acting almost like a glimpse into the past, providing the crew hints at what path they must follow if they wish to reach the Sentinel artifact. Finding pieces to the Staff of Ice, they reconstructed within the Dark Ether Nexus, which they gained access to by using the amulet. After upgrading the Staff of Ice, they begin 4 trials for each of the 4 statues around the tomb, which resembles Dr. Modi's creations, but I'm not going to get into that. Once all 4 challenges were complete, the bridge to the Sentinel artifact constructs itself before them, allowing them passage to their goal. But it seems the Sentinel artifact isn't going out without a fight. Surviving against its lasers and more waves of the dead, mixed in with doppelgasts, shock mimics, and amalgams, they shatter 9 pieces of the artifact until it finally gives in and deems them worthy of possessing its power. Except, as it turns out, it has no power. They're going to need to fill the artifact with prima materia, and to find that, they're going to have to finally head to Liberty Falls. Somehow securing a trip into the United States without getting in trouble with Border Patrol, Customs, or the US military, Weaver, Carver, Maya, Gray, and the rest arrive in Liberty Falls, landing just ahead of the Colton Hill mansion. They had seen the chaos across the city, but they had to remain focused. Sam was waiting for them in the depths of the mansion, and they had an artifact to fill. Not only that, but their true objective lied somewhere in the mansion. They just had to find out where he was. Acquiring the Raygun Mark IIs that Janus found in the Dark Ether, they quickly upgrade them into the 3 Janus-made variants, which are required in order to open gateways into 3 liminal spaces in the mansion dedicated to Fats Malloy, Sam Colton, and Josiah Shem. They find items important to their downfalls and use it to sacrifice their souls into the Sentinel artifact, transforming them into prima materia. Each step closer to filling the artifact, Richtofen would call out from the unknown, begging them not to let Sam acquire the Sentinel artifact. But it's too late. They've no reason to listen to his cries for help. Despite the warnings, they give Sam the Sentinel artifact, who thanks them for everything. But she reveals her true intentions and warps them away into the liminal space that she's trapped Richtofen inside of, perhaps letting them get the revenge they craved, while she flies off to Janus Towers to obtain her physical form.
You idiots gave us the Sentinel artifact, didn't you?
This has been a long time coming, Richtofen.
Yes. Yes, it has. A whole decade. 10 years since my wife and child were killed in a botched hit intended for me. Burned alive in a fire set by an inept, one-eyed CIA assassin, with help from his German accomplice.
My God. Maxis and I. We killed your family. You knew. The whole time we were working for Requiem. You knew.
It's why you were handpicked. Kept where I could see you, kept under my thumb. At least Maxis proved useful. Everything I have done. Requiem, Project Janus, Sam, all of it, just to fix your murderous fuck-up and bring Mary and Samuel back from the dead. And now, you have lost the one thing that can actually do it! With this device, Josiah Shem accidentally shattered space-time. I used it as the basis for my technology, to access liminal spaces so we could feed the artifact. Now, you can either use that to get your petty revenge, or to get us the hell out of here.
That line Craig Houston said for Black Ops Cold War rings true here. Some things don't want to stay dead. While Sam prepares everything at Janus Towers, our main crew is busy fighting off against a zombified T-Rex, taken from the fossil that Colton had purchased. Perhaps the coolest thing I've ever seen come out of zombies. The crew struggles to take down their prehistoric foe, with the quote-unquote help of Richtofen, who provides sniper support and the occasional armor and ammo drop. But even as a zombie T-Rex, it wasn't built for modern-day weaponry, and so ultimately, the tyrant Lizard King is overthrown. Climbing out of the pit they were tossed in, they learn from Richtofen that Sam intends to use the Sentinel artifact to generate Samantha's body and inhabit it for herself, having complete control over the Dark Ether. This leaves our crew in an uneasy alliance with Richtofen as they march forward toward Janus Towers, and their final battle awaits them, and a decision that will ultimately shape the future in unknown ways. Inside Janus Towers, they have some difficult decisions ahead of them. Who will they choose to help? Richtofen, the man who betrayed them over a misunderstanding and imprisoned them for 6 years and caused the banishment of their friend Samantha Maxis? Or Sam, the AI who has convinced herself that she is the real Samantha and has manipulated the crew to accomplish her goals whilst causing outbreaks that have killed the innocent? But it isn't just these two they have to consider helping. 2 other voices make themselves known. John Blanchard, who wants to help protect the director and stop Panos, and, well, Pericles Panos, who communicates with the Great Voice to fulfill an unknown purpose. I think this choice might be more obvious. Before we pursue the main plot, let's discuss where our cast's heads are at right now, starting with Weaver. Since the beginning of this story, Weaver's mindset has been unstable. His desire for revenge outdoes the rest of his allies. Since his first appearance, Weaver's always had an eye for an eye mentality, and that is definitely seen in his character. But with Kraft telling him that Richtofen was his son, and finding out the traumatic slaughter he caused was actually Richtofen's own family, that want for revenge is gone. He's found new purpose. With the Sentinel artifact, he may actually have a chance to undo his greatest mistake and come out a better man. Death has become part of him, but maybe now he doesn't need to let that be who he is anymore. Maya. When we first met Maya, she was here to find her brother. Revenge wasn't quite part of her plan yet, but with Nathan's transformation from the hands of Dr. Modi, and knowing it was Franco who put him there, she decided to stay with the crew and get even, removing Modi and Franco from the picture. Now at the end of this arc, she finds herself staying not because she has nothing left to do, but because these people, who have become her friends, helped her in her darkest hour. It's time to repay the favor, choosing to be Team Sam. Gray. Being the closest one to Samantha, Gray's resolve from the start has been to bring back Samantha Maxis. Revenge on Richtofen was involved in this, but it was of a lesser importance to her than it was her friends. With Sam in the picture, it brings some uneasiness. This Sam wants to have a body that will resemble Samantha, but it won't be her Maxis. With the truth behind Richtofen's family told to them, Gray decides that it's best to help Richtofen, not because she's sympathetic to him or against Sam, but because it would clear Samantha's name, and as she says, perhaps I owe her that. Carver. Said to be the shoulders for the group, Carver's kind of been an unexplored character, which is a deep shame as he was surprisingly interesting in Cold War. He was more than just a military guy, but that's a whole rant. What has happened with Carver since Terminus and Up to Reckoning? Well, his trust with Sam has increased the closer they got to the finish, though he's admitted to feeling something was off about her, staying true to his paranoid trait from Cold War. But even after Sam revealed her true intentions, Carver considers her as part of this team and opts to help her. Now that we know where our crew's at mentally and motivation-wise, let's get back into the plot. Activating a Frankenklaus unit to interact with a series of terminals that will help reactivate the portal to the third tower, which is where both Sam and the Sentinel artifact are currently residing, they're going to have to acquire Dr. Panos' pet project in the biolab. When Gray enters the bioweapons lab, she finds DNA samples taken from herself, Weaver, and Carver, and the worst of them, eggs taken directly from Samantha Maxis herself. Sickened and disgusted to her core, Gray lashes out in a fit of justified rage. Maya walks in and checks on Gray, learning of what's happened. Gray feels guilt over not knowing this traumatic and awful event that Samantha experienced. It turns out Richtofen has collected their DNA for an as-of-now unknown goal, but we know what will come of this down the line. Together, Gray and Maya trash the lab before grabbing the living biomatter for Panos' weapons project. At the same time, Sam contacts Weaver privately, telling him the complete truth of Richtofen's family's death. Even after being told the truth by Richtofen, it turns out there were still missing pieces to this puzzle. Kruger was the one responsible for it, for all of this. Using the living matter, they transfer the Forsaken soul into an Uberklaus and destroy him once and for all, becoming the Gorgafex wonder weapon. Their first decision comes into play, deciding to help Blanchard or Panos, either of which will provide them an enhancement of the Gorgafex, which is required to add an extra boost of power to the teleporter. If they choose to help Panos for whatever reason, then they will gas Blanchard out of his room, taking his essence and fusing it with Gorgafex, making it shoot toxic gas clouds. Helping Blanchard will transfer him back into an Echo, which is used to upgrade the Gorgafex to shoot chain reactions of electricity. Currently it isn't known which side is canon, but realistically why would they choose to help Panos? They even expressed distaste for him in the map, with maybe only Gray being on the fence. Anyway, after doing everything that's required of them to bring power to the teleporter, they enter Tower 3 and confront the Sentinel artifact. The timeline splits in two, but they share a section of their ending, and currently which ending is canon is not known. Starting with helping Sam, Richtofen has officially lost his last chance. If he can't defeat the people he had relied on, then any hope he has at bringing back his family will disappear forever. Operating an Ubersuit, Richtofen unleashes his desperate rage on Weaver, Gray, Carver, and Maya, who dismantle his Ubersuit. But before they can celebrate, Richtofen ejects from the Ubersuit and flies around on his jetpack, firing his Wunderwaffe DG-2. This battle is so difficult and insane, and despite being just a man, he gives up a good fight. After enough time, they eventually bring him earthbound, drawing his last breath. But what happens if you help Richtofen instead? Instead of facing an Uberklaus army and a grief-stricken madman, Sam summons herself from a Dark Ether rift, firing beams of etheric energy and hellfire. The crew provide endless firepower onto their metallic enemy, destroying her cores until she shuts down, forever. Like before, a beam fires into the sky and the four are teleported away. As for Weaver, Carver, Gray, and Maya, they reappear in the lobby of Janus Towers when a familiar voice calls out from behind them. Except, it doesn't belong to the person they think it is.
Welcome to the party.
What happens directly next is, as of now, unknown. But with the radio from Dr. Panos and leaks that are impossible to avoid, it seems that Weaver, Gray, Carver, and Maya will be joining forces with new versions of Richtofen, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio, and heading to a remake of Transit set within the Dark Ether. But what do we know for what happens next? Well, in 1993, Gray will give birth to Ava Jansen by using the DNA samples mentioned in Reckoning. When Ava was born, a replica of herself was born within the Dark Ether known as the Entity, who plays the role of central antagonist of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies arc. By 1996, Gray, Carver, Strauss, and Weaver sacrificed their lives. The current reasons aren't known, but Gray looks significantly older, implying that perhaps their exposure to the Dark Ether causes them to age rapidly and perish as a result. Their hands are seen connected to a machine in the center with 4 vials of Ethereum, though 2 of them are missing. Ava is then raised by the Jansen family, who we currently know nothing about aside from having CIA connections. Ava is also warned of the Shadowsmiths by the Entity before her destruction, and it's pretty clear that Panos is speaking to these Shadowsmiths, so we'll likely see them at long last in Black Ops 7's arc. Speaking of Ava, she is seen getting dragged into the Dark Ether when she visits Liberty Falls, either by the Shadowsmiths, who appeared in the mirror prior, or by Samantha, or by Sam in Samantha's body. As for Ravenov, he stays in hiding or under government protection until the year 2021, where he assists Operation Deadbolt in all of their operations. Fletcher goes on to create Terminus Outcomes, which makes no sense now, as he was only on Terminus for less than a month, and then Crystal Miller joins the military and also assists Operation Deadbolt, getting closure on her childhood trauma through Ravenov's kindness. And as of now, that is all of the lore told to us in Black Ops 6's zombie story arc. I am so sorry if this was a messy one. I really did try to put it all together in an order that was both informational and entertaining, but not too confusing. At the same time, this plot is perhaps the second worst plot we've ever seen in Zombies history. The amount of times it contradicts itself or abandons plot lines, creates new plot holes, or comes up with an extremely unsatisfying conclusion is genuine insanity. The intel system in this game is a significant downgrade from the one in Black Ops Cold War, and while people complain about how much there was in that game, my simple argument is, you didn't care to begin with. Could there be less? Yes, but the lore in it was important and it expanded on the world in ways never done before or since. Zombies is a mode. It will never get the budget or time we want it to have. Providing the story exclusively through Easter eggs and cutscenes limits the story tremendously. It means we will never get the same depth we had even back then. And it isn't just limiting the story by abandoning the intel, but the writing has been noticeably worse. The flavor text on artifacts are actually useless, and since we can't view the models of artifacts like we could in Cold War, it makes them entirely worthless. The radios and documents have moments of strong storytelling, but for every good piece of intel, there's at least 2 more that are useless or cause plot holes. It is astounding how often this happens in this game. Anyway, as for the main crew, I love them. I think they are amazing characters, held back by bad writers and a lack of focus. They have stakes in this plot that weren't explored until the last map, except for Maya, who got Terminus and Citadel to herself for major character development. This is not a jab at Maya, but I will say that I think it is unfair to the rest of the cast. And since they were barely given proper attention in BO6, I can't imagine how they're going to be handled sharing the spotlight alongside 4 characters who are here only to serve to a fan base who has long since moved on from zombies, or never even cared for the story to begin with. This was the most frustrating year to be a lore fanatic for zombies, and I didn't know it could get this bad. And now it seems we're abandoning everything from before in favor of going on a nostalgic adventure with 4 characters who shouldn't exist. I have been a die-hard Zombies fan since World at War, and even in the games that people have hated from Treyarch, I've loved. I could never really be disappointed, but this game was something else. It was a genuine mess when it should have been anything but. But hey, I tried, and I hope you enjoyed it. I will still be doing zombie lore videos, and I will be getting Black Ops 7, but what happens after that is unknown. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.